Okay, today we're going to be talking about lenders. Specifically, let's say you've got a property, you've got it remodeled, and you've got it on the market. And then a real estate agent brings you the offer that says, hey, this is a great offer, let's accept it or let's counter. You're ready to come to terms on that. Well, there's something that needs to happen long before you accept that offer, and that is verification of the lender and verification that the borrower can actually get the loan. See, the worst thing you want to do is tie up this property for 30 or 45 or even 60 days to find out that this borrower can't actually get the loan that they were planning on. So there's a couple of steps that you can take that will save you a ton of time and save you a ton of money. Okay, first off, before you accept the offer, there's a couple of things that I want to know. Number one, I actually want to speak with the lender. If I can't talk to the lender, I'm not interested in doing business with them, because that means they're not going to be there to help us when there's problems, when there's issues, when we need something. And so if I can't speak to the lender, I'm not even interested. Number two, you'll probably get a pre-qualification or a pre-approval. Okay, well, let's talk about both of these. A pre-approval, first and foremost, is not worth the paper it's actually written on, okay? A pre-approval is just like, hey, they're pre-approved, they don't even do anything. But a pre-qualification is different. Now, lots of times people interchange these, so I want to make sure you understand. A pre-approval basically says, hey, we think we can get these guys financing, but we haven't looked at their credit, we haven't looked at their income, we haven't verified the jobs, we haven't done any of those types of things. Where a pre-qualification is different. A pre-qualification means, hey, we've looked at their credit, we've looked at their debt to income, okay? We have validated employment. Those are the types of things we're looking for. Now, the ultimate in this is they're getting what's called DU or LP approval. Okay, what this is this is a computer underwriter that basically says, hey, you're good to go based upon these things that have been put in, and they will actually say, hey, they can buy a house up to whatever price, 250, 500,000, whatever that price is, and they've said, hey, based upon the information you've submitted and based upon having these things, we're saying they can go up to $500,000. And in some cases, this doesn't even need to be underwritten, because if they're in good enough shape, it'll just go through with a computer. Now, this can change, but this is kind of the way that it is. There are some circumstances where it doesn't work like this, but as a general rule. So what I want to know is I want to speak with the lender. I'll typically get a pre-approval. I don't really like getting a pre-approval, but I'll deal with it. But what I'm going to do is see if they've gotten pre-qualified. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to have a phone conversation with the lender and say, I have some questions for you. Number one, have you checked their credit? Do they have judgments? Do they have bankruptcies? Do they have any issues like that that would prevent them from getting a loan? Yes or no? And then it's saying, hey, what type of a tier borrower are they? Are they in a high credit tier, low credit tier? Is this going to be a subprime loan, meaning a loan that's not prime, meaning it's not going to be as easy to happen? Or is this going to be an FHA, a VA? What type of loan is this? Have you validated their debt to income? And have you validated their employment and their length of employment? Are all things that we can be asking. In addition to that, are we LP approved? Do we have approval that's gone through there? Now, asking those questions is going to make somebody say, hey, these guys actually know what they're talking about. Now, for me, I'm going to make sure that my agent goes through and asks all those questions, writes them all down, and gives it to me while they give me the offer, because it's no sense even looking at an offer unless we've had the conversation with this lender to know that they're actually there. Now, one of two things is going to happen here. The lender is going to say, I can't give you that information without my client's permission. Well, that's kind of true, because I'm not necessarily asking for specific information. If I ask them, what is the guy's credit score, that maybe is something that the lender couldn't give me. But if I'm asking what tier borrower are they, they're not actually giving me specific information. They're giving me generalities as to where they fall. Have you validated employment? And would it be approved by your underwriter is not a specific. They're saying in generalities, yes, and it has been approved. They're not giving me personal information. Have you validated their debt to income, and are they qualified to buy this property? Not just does it work on paper, but have you validated their income and their debts, and does it qualify for that? Is not getting personal information from them. It's saying, yes, I've done those things, and yes, they qualify, but the exact details of that, they don't necessarily have to give me. So you're gonna run into two types of lenders. You're gonna run into lenders that'll say, yep, we got them credit qualified, we've got their debt to income, we've got this. The other thing I say is there anything you can think of that could prevent these guys from getting a loan? And the only answer that should come back is, if there's a problem on the inspection, if there's a problem with termites, if there's a problem with the appraisal, right? That's the only things I'm looking for that are acceptable, because if I'm a good lender, I'm saying I can't control those things, but everything else, I've looked at their credit, I've looked at their debt to income, I've looked at their employment, we've taken through underwriting, I've gotten an amount, they know what the payments are gonna be, we've got an idea of the interest rate, like we're ready to roll, we just need the right property, and we've got to make sure that property appraises and there's no problems with the property. So that's basically what I'm looking for, that's conversation. And I want to have confidence from the lender, right? So some lenders will say, I can't give you any of that information, and they're going to hide behind this privacy stuff. Well, there's a way to handle that, and that's simply you call the agent that brought the offer, your agent calls them and says, hey, look, your lender won't give us information. We're not looking for specific credit scores. We're not looking for specifically how much they make, but we're looking to know what tier borrower are they? Are they a subprime or are they regular? Do they qualify for FHA financing? Has he pulled their credit? Do they have any judgments, collections, bankruptcies that have an impact on them getting this loan? Has he validated their debt to income? Has he validated their employment and their term of employment? Typically, you've got to be there for 2 years. Do they have an automatic underwriter approval? Do they have a person that has done the underwriting and approval? Do they know how much they're qualified for? Do they know how much those payments will be? And do they know an approximate interest rate? If they can't answer those questions, you have a problem. They're probably not going to move forward with the loan, and they're going to drag you out. So some lenders are really worried about legalities and all that type of stuff. And so if they won't give you the information, there's two ways to go about this. You can give that information to the agent for them and say, these are the things that we want to know. Or you can get permission to release information. So you can call the buyer's agent and say, look, we want to know some information from the lender. The lender's hesitant to give it to us. So one of two things, either I need you to get the answers to these questions and give them to me, or I need your client to give permission to the lender to allow me to ask these questions. Now, typically a simple email or a phone call will say, hey, yes, go ahead and answer the questions so that we can get the information. And in some cases, you can use a form that's called Authorization to Release Information, okay? Authorization to release information is something that the buyer would sign that we give to the lender, and then the lender could tell me anything I wanted to know, like how much do they make? How much are their debts? And that's where you could say, oh, they make $75,000 a year. Their credits at 725, mid FICO score, because now they've been given exact permission to give specific details. Most of the time, when you're working with a lender, you're calling them and asking these questions, they're happy to answer them, right? They're saying, hey, we've got good credit. I'm going to put them in an upper echelon. They are not a subprime borrower. Debt to income, we validated. They're more than qualified to go up to the $500,000. I have validated their employment and their length of employment, and that all looks great. Don't see any concerns with that. We've gotten automated underwriting, and I've also had an underwriter look at the file, and no concerns on that. The only thing that could stop this from closing would be a problem with the appraisal, which could be termite or something to do with the condition of the property that an FHA inspector may see. Other than that, this is a slam dunk deal. These are great borrowers, and we want to move forward to make this happen. You should be able to get that out of a phone conversation. If the lender that you're calling is dodging you or texting you back, you need to say, I need to set a time to speak with you. I need to set a time to speak with you, and do not accept the offer or even think about accepting the offer until you've had a conversation with the lender. Now, if the lender keeps avoiding you, you call the buyer's agent and say, we're not interested in even looking at accepting this offer, countering this offer, doing anything in this offer until we have spoken with the lender. The lender is avoiding us and not giving us that information, and we need to speak with them. So please make that arrangement and let me know what will work, and then we're happy to take a look at your offer. Now, some people are so desperate to sell their property, they skip this entire step. And I'm telling you, skipping this step is going to hurt you tremendously. There's a few reasons why. The longer the property's on the market, the less activity that it actually gets, the less interest that it gets. Let's talk about this for a minute. So when the property is on the market, that's where you've got the most amount of interest, okay? So this is time. This is 1 day. This is 300 days, let's say, so you've got all this time. Then you've got your interest level. So this is really high. Lots of people looking at it. It's new on the market. What you're going to see is over time, and it's not exactly like that, but over time, when you first put it on is where you have the most people looking at it. It's going to be new on the market, all those types of things. The longer that it goes, the older that it gets and the fewer people that are going to actually be looking at it. So you've got this window of time here, which I think is typically your 60-day window, where you need to be getting offers, getting this property under contract. Maybe it's a 90-day, just kind of dependent upon the market, but that first 90 days, let's say, is the most critical, which is also why we talk about precision pricing. We've got some videos on precision pricing. If you haven't looked at those, you need to take a look at those as well. So what happens is if you accept this offer and say it's in day 60, okay, and they end up not closing and now you're at day 90, well, your opportunity for number of interest and people that are actually looking at it has declined over that period of time. So especially if it's in this section, but you should be doing this always, is verifying the lender, verifying the information to make sure if you're going to go under contract that this is actually going to close. Now, could there be some situation that makes it so it doesn't close, like they lose their employment or there's a sickness in the family or somebody passes away? Yes. But that's going to be pretty rare. So you want to know with a high level of confidence that this closing is actually going to happen. And you want to know that before you go under contract with this person. And the only way to know that is by getting information from the lender. Don't skip this step. It will save you a ton of money because keep in mind, the longer this property's on the market, the more taxes you pay, the more insurance you pay, the more interest that you pay on it, and the fewer buyers that are interested in that, especially if you're in a declining market or a market that is more of a buyer's market. So what did we learn today? Number one, do not accept an offer unless you have spoken with the lender or your agent has spoken with the lender. Now, I can tell you, there's a lot of agents that are gonna be like, that's not necessary, we don't need to do this, whatever the case is. They're wrong. They're simply wrong. You need to know this information. You need to know it with confidence before you should ever consider going under contract with one of these properties, period. You should not do that. Because the agent is just hoping, they're just rolling the dice. They're like, well, I'll get as many accepted as I can with all the different properties that I have, and hopefully some of them will come, and the ones that don't, oh well, we'll put it back on the market and try and get another buyer. They're not thinking in terms of business and the cost that you have and the time that you have on this. So get verifications from the lender, make sure that they're good, and if they're questionable, I wouldn't accept the offer until you get evidence from the lender that shows they really can get this loan. Anytime you're dealing with anything that's a subprime loan with people with not as good as credit scores, you are taking on more risk. So make sure that you realize that, and that's something you should take into consideration as part of the negotiations. Because if you're taking on and it's a subprime buyer and it's going to take them a couple months to do that, you're paying a lot of interest, you're paying taxes, you're paying property upkeep and all those different types of things, and you're risking that with the hopes that they'll do it. Now, one of the things that you'll find is sometimes these subprime borrowers are willing to offer more for the property than some of your good qualified borrowers are. So this is something to take into consideration because the risk is that they end up not closing and you're left with a property that's further down on the market with less of a buyer's pool to actually look at the property. So my recommendation is if you're not solid that this borrower can get the loan and very, very confident in that, if you get the answers to these questions and you're not confident in them, wait for another buyer to come to fruition or work with that lender to get information to give you evidence and proof, not just their word, that they are going to be able to move forward. So this is how you verify a lender to make sure that they are going to be able to close on your property before you go under contract with your property, with your fix and flip.